So generally speaking, we've got a field, most of our fields here are left aligned with a little gray border and a little bit of padding in them. And you can see that it's defined as default. But then when you get into something where, and this is also center aligned here. But when I had a field that was going to be a multi-line, I didn't really want it to be middle aligned. I wanted it to be top aligned, because to the user, it would look funny if they only had a little bit of data in this field and it was being center at middle aligned. So this is where I started to create, defining it as a multi-line, so that I would know that if I had a field that had a multi-line, that meant that it was going to balance to the top. And then another option is to make it red. So I wanted to highlight the fields that have to appear on this report so that the user was aware that they're to maybe not leave these fields blank, even though there's no real validation on these fields. It's just a visual indicator to the user that there's something different about that field. Obviously, a calendar item is going to be different than an edit field, but if it's primarily styled the same way, I've kept it under the default setting. So that default style sheet is going to have an entry for any kind of object that you can put on a layout. So then as we get into like text designation, so this is a field label. And if it was anything other than default, I started prefacing it with FL, and then the color, the size, and the alignment. And then anything else that might be unique about that particular field label. Now you can see some of them I didn't change. And then when you get into just general, since this field label, FileMaker just typically considers this text in terms of a style. It doesn't differentiate between an actual field label and text. But obviously you're still going to have text on a layout in various areas. So I started using web-based conventions to kind of create a hierarchy of how styles would be applied across in various situations. So using an H1, I would put a card designation if it was something that was going to be in a card layout, so that again, you always have consistency. You know exactly where to go, that it's an H1, it's the topmost type of text on the layout, but it only relates to a card in that situation. And then, kind of continuing with that, this one, I probably didn't grab that one, but see, like this would be an ideal where this should be an H1, a regular H1 that's black, that's 26 point left aligned. So that should be renamed to this, but I don't want to really rename it because I don't know where else it's being used right now. Then when you get into smaller text, I started using a P designation. And if it was something to be used for a specific purpose, like a caption or instructions, I just appended a description so that it would be very easy to find the particular text styling that I needed to put on there. So that's basically it. When it comes to like objects, button bars start with BB. A single button would start with just a B, and again be followed by whatever the color was, the size, the orientation, and then whether or not it had padding or some other styling. So I don't know. That's it.
So the first part of the name kind of describes the object, and the second part of the name kind of describes some style attributes.
Right, and that's because so that you could reuse something like black. So you could have black 14L, but you can only have that once. So if you put something before it, now I can have a field label that's black 14L, but I could have a button B dot black 14L. And it's just describing the, well, in the case of a button, it's probably describing the color of the button, not the color of the text.
Is the so using field for an example here, we've got field FL or any one of these hierarchies. Using FL, the FL one as an example, is one of them designated as kind of the default? Like,
Right.
I'm not sure that makes any sense.
Right. If what your primary style is this size, this color, this alignment, it's saved as default. But say I needed this to be the same size, it's 14 and the same gray, but I need it to be center aligned, then I would make one that's the same, but it does the center alignment like that.
I see. I see what you're saying. Okay.
So there's a default, right? Because again, the only reason I'm preserving the default is that if you go to drag elements onto the layout, they're always going to come with the default setting. So if you didn't know, if you were a new developer to the solution, you might not know that you'd have to retag it. The only time you would retag it is if your alignment was changing.
Gotcha.
Or you had, like, I also had different styles if they were for a portal. So depending on where you were putting it, I was allowing there to be specific styles if they were portal related. And that just in a way gives you a little more design flexibility, but then also separates out what are your sort of primary layout objects. And then under other conditions, how are you using or styling that particular element? And you can see there's a lot of leftover ones. I mean, I didn't get everything, but probably what happened was this was the original assignment. And instead of renaming it, I just actually assigned it a new style. So there's a lot of residual ones in here, but you know, it's kind of really tedious to go through and sort of figure out what's been styled and what's not been styled. But I think if you started off with creating a layout that had every kind of element on it and maybe a smattering of different, like for example, you may, if the left is always the default, that then you have a center and a right for the situations where you would have, you might need to have that field label centered or right.
You should be able to use FM perception to identify styles that are unused.
Like, does it really?
Yeah.
Styles?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it loads styles in the layout object, and then you can see which ones are out of the theme.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, super helpful. I like it.
Right.
It's actually really similar to the naming convention I use. I've got every possible object defined in this theme, so it's just a simple demo file, basically. It's just a kind of a template. There's no data in it. It's all just layout object. So every possible object that can be defined in FileMaker is on this layout. And then here's my legend, which is like I said, very similar to yours. The object type, whether it's going to be, you know, the text style is applied to it, the size, whether it's the font size or object, you know, in icon size, the justify or the alignment, which is left, you know, left top or center or full, whatever. And then if there's like a sub theme, like it's going to be light or dark or, you know, specific to some other thing that you want reference. The theme character limit is 100 characters. So a theme style, a name can be is limited to 100 characters, which leaves for a lot of flexibility in here. So you can kind of put a lot in there. So, and then I do things like I always have a layout that has like the main colors being used and just things that I can access easily if I need to, you know, change a
style guide.
A style. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It'd be great if we could actually use like commented style sheets, but we can't. So we'll get into that conversation. So anyway, very similar to yours, Julian. It's actually I'm pretty impressed by that.
You said you do have a layout that has style, like every styled object.
Yeah, this layout here.
Oh, this one here. Oh,
Yep. As far as I know, they're, like I said, I wrote this years ago. So I don't think there are any other newer objects released since this was made, but or object states. But you know, there's always something that can be added, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How do you determine at the beginning of a thing like an amount? Like, do you say three colors, 3 fonts, 3 sizes in general, or do you just kind of add in things as you get a feel for it when you're creating?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I always start with the standards, you know, fields, labels, and buttons, and then kind of go from there depending on what the project calls for. And beyond that, I don't really, you know, it depends on project scope and, you know, what they have the budget for. But yeah,